If you had a AdSense account that was banned and you believe that you were unjustly accused of causing that ban, you need to listen to the information that I'm about to present to you. The information comes from a letter that claims to be from an individual that was a former Google employee, and they outline in great detail the policies and procedures that were put in place that, in my opinion, are unethical and criminal. I was affected by these policies and procedures and can show a loss. If you are in the same situation, I would appreciate if you could send this video to your lawyer and encourage them to contact me, and let's discuss a class action lawsuit to get our money back that we've earned and Google has stolen from us. So with that being said, I'll begin and I'll read this letter from this former Google employee. I'm writing this to leak information to the public of what I witnessed and took part in while being an employee. My position was to deal with AdSense accounts, more specifically the accounts of publishers, not advertisers. I was an employee at Google for a period of several years in this capacity. Having signed many documents such as NDAs and non-competes, there are many repercussions for me, especially in the form of legal retribution from Google. But I have carefully planned this leak to coincide with certain factors in Google, such as waiting for appropriate employee turnaround so that my identity could not be discovered. To sum it up for everyone, I took part in what I and many others would consider theft of money from the publishers by Google and from direct orders of management. There were many AdSense employees involved, and it spanned many years. And I hear it's still happening today, except on a much wider scale. No one on the outside knows it. If they did, the FBI and possibly the IRS would immediately launch an investigation, because what they're doing is so inherently illegal, and they're flying completely under the radar. It began in 2009. Everything was perfectly fine prior to 2009, and in fact it couldn't be more perfect from an AdSense employee's perspective. But something changed. Google bans and ban criteria before December 2012. In the first quarter of 2009, there was a, quote, sit down, end quote, from the AdSense division higher-ups to talk about new emerging issues and the roles we, the employees and the AdSense division, needed to play. It was a very long meeting, and it was very detailed and intense. What it boiled down to was that Google had suffered some very serious losses in the financial department several months earlier. They kept saying how we, quote, needed to tighten our belts, end quote, and they didn't want it to come from the Google employees' pockets. So they were going to, in their words, quote, carry out extreme quality control on AdSense publishers, end quote. When one of my fellow coworkers asked what they meant by that, their response was that AdSense itself hands out too many checks each month to publishers, and that the checks were too large and needed to end right away. Many of the employees were not pleased about this, like myself, but they were successful in scaring the rest into thinking it would be their jobs and their money that would be on the line if they didn't participate. The meeting left many confused as to how this was going to happen. What did they mean by extreme quality control? A few other smaller meetings occurred with certain key people in AdSense division that featured the idea and procedures they planned on implementing. There were lots of rumors and quiet talking amongst the employees. There was a lot of speculations, Some came true, but some didn't. But the word was that they planned on cutting off large portions of the publisher's payments. After that point, there was a running gag amongst fellow coworkers. We would walk by each other in the hallway and whisper, "Don't be evil," and roll our eyes. What happened afterwards became much worse. Their, quote, quality control, end quote, came into full effect. Managers pushed for wide-scale account bans, and the first batch of bans happened in March of 2009. The main reason, the publishers were making too much money. But something quite devious happened. We were told to begin banning accounts that were close to their payout periods, which is why account bans never occurred immediately after a payout. The purpose was to get the money owed to the publishers back to Google's AdSense, while having already served up the ads to the public. This way the advertisers couldn't claim we didn't do our part in delivering the ads and ask for their money back. So in a sense, we had thousands upon thousands of publishers delivering ads we knew they would never see any money for. Google reaped both sides of the coin, got money from the advertisers, and used the publishers and didn't have to pay them a single penny. We were told to go and look into the publishers' accounts, and if any publisher had accumulated earnings exceeding $5,000 and was nearing a payout period, we were told to ban the account right away and reverse the earnings back. They kept saying it was needed for the company and that most of these publishers were ripping Google off anyways, and it was time that their gravy train needed to end. Many employees were not happy about this. A few resigned over it. I did not. I stayed because I had family to support, and secondly, I wanted to see how far they would go. From 2009 to 2012, there were many more big batches of bans. The biggest of all the banning sessions occurred in April of 2012. The AdSense division had enormous pressures from the company to make up for financial losses and for Google's lack of reaching certain internal financial goals for that quarter period. So the push was on. The employees felt really uneasy about the whole thing, but we were threatened with our job loss if we didn't enforce the company's wishes. Those who voiced concerns or issues were basically ridiculed by not having the company's best interest in mind and not being a team player. Morale in the division was at an all-time low. The mood of the whole place changed quite rapidly, and it no longer was a fun place to work. The bans of April 2012 came fast and furious. Absolutely none of them were investigated, nor were they even justified in any way. We were told to get rid of as many of the accounts with the largest check payouts earnings waiting to happen. No reason, just do it, and don't question it. It was heart-wrenching to see all that money that people had earned get stolen from them. And that's what I saw it as. It was robbery of the AdSense publishers. Many launched appeals, complaints, but it was futile because absolutely no one actually took time to review the appeals or complaints. Most were simply erased without even opening. The rest were deposited into a database and never touched again. Several publishers launched legal actions, which were settled, but Google had come up with a new policy to deal with situations such as that because it perceived it as a serious problem to be avoided. After December 2012, the new policy. The new policy, quote, shelter the possible problem makers and fuck the rest, end quote. Those words were actually said by Google AdSense execs when he spoke about the new procedures and policies for the, quote, account quality control, end quote. The new policy was officially called AdSense Quality Control Color Codes, commonly referred to as AQ3C by the employees. What it basically was a categorization of publishers' accounts. Those publishers that could do the most damage by having their accounts banned were placed in a VIP group that was to be left alone. The rest of the publishers would be placed into other groupings accordingly. The new AQ3C also implemented quality control quotas for the account auditors. So if you didn't meet the quality control target, aka account bans, you would be called in for a performance review. There were 4, quote, groups, end quote, publishers could fall into if they reached certain milestones. They were as follows. The red group, urgent attention required. Any AdSense account that reached $10,000 a month were marked immediately and flagged, unless they are part of the green group. In the beginning, there were many in this category, and most were seen as problematic and were seen as abusing the system by Google. So every effort was taken to bring those numbers down. They are placed in what employees termed, quote, the eagle eye, end quote, where the, quote, AdSense eagle eye team, end quote, would actively and consistently audit the accounts and look for any absolute reason for a ban. Even if the reason was far-fetched or unsubstantiated or unprovable, the ban would occur. The, quote, eagle eye team, end quote, referred to a group of internal auditors whose main role was to consistently monitor publishers' accounts and sites. A reason had to be internally attached to the account ban. The problem was that notifying the publisher for the reason is not required, even if the publisher asks. The exception, the exact reason, must be provided if a legal representative contacts Google on behalf of the account holder. But again, if a ban is to occur, it must occur as close to the payout period as possible, with the most amount of money accrued and earned. Yellow group. Serious attention required. Any AdSense account that reaches the $5,000 per month is marked for review, unless they are again part of the green group. All of the publisher sites' accounts will be placed in queue for audit. Most of the time, the queue is full, so most are delayed for their audits in a timely fashion. The second highest amount of bans occur at this level. A reason has to be internally attached to the account ban. Notifying the publisher for the reason is not required, even if the publisher asks. The exception, the exact reason must be provided if a legal representative contacts Google on behalf of the account holder. But again, if a ban is to occur, it must occur as close to the payout period as possible with the most amount of money accrued and earned. The blue group. Moderate attention required. Any AdSense account that reaches the $1,000 a month mark is flagged for possible review, unless, again, you are part of the green group. Only the main site and account will be placed in queue for what is called a quick audit. Most bans that occur happen at this level. Main reason is that a reason doesn't have to be attached to the ban, so employees use these bans to fill up their monthly quotas. So many are simply randomly picked and clicked. A reason doesn't have to be internally attached to the account ban. Notifying the publisher for the reason is not a requirement, even if the publisher asks. But again, if a ban is to occur, it must occur as close to the payout period as possible with the most amount of money accrued. The green group, VIP status, what the employees refer to as, quote, the untouchables, end quote. Any AdSense account associated with an incorporated entity or individual that can inflict serious damage to Google by negative media information, rallying large amounts of anti-AdSense support, or cause mass loss of AdSense publisher support. Google employees wanting to use AdSense on their websites were automatically placed in the green group. So the database contained mainly Google insiders and their family members. If you worked at Google, you were placed in this category. You stayed in it even if you left Google. So it included many former employees. Employees simply had to fill out a form with site-specific details and their account information. Sites in the green group were basically given carte blanche to do anything they wanted, even if it flagrantly went against the AdSense TOS and policies. That is why you can encounter a site with AdSense, but yet have and do things completely against AdSense rules. Extra care is taken not to interrupt or disrupt these accounts. If an employee makes a mistake with a green level account, they can lose their job, since it is seen as a very grievous mistake. New Policies 2012, Part 2. Internal changes to the policies were consistent. They wanted to make it more efficient and streamlined. They saw its current process as having too much human involvement and oversight. They wanted it to be more automated and less involved. So the other part of the new policy change was to incorporate other Google services into assisting the quote quality control end quote program. What they came up with will anger many users when they find out. It involved skewing data in Google Analytics. They decided it would be a good idea to alter the statistical data shown for websites, and it first began with just altering data reports for analytic account holders that also have an AdSense account. But they ran into many issues and decided it would be simpler just to skew the report data across the board to remain consistent and implement features globally. So what this means is the statistical data for a website using Google Analytics is not even close to being accurate. The numbers are incredibly deflated. The reason behind their decision is that if an individual links their AdSense account and their analytics account, the analytics account can be used to deflate the earnings automatically without any human intervention. They discovered that if an individual had an AdSense account, then they were also likely to use Google Analytics. So Google used it to their advantage. This led to many publishers to actively display ads without earning any money at all, even to this day. Even if their actual website traffic was high and had high click-throughs, the data would automatically be skewed in favor of Google and at a total loss for the publisher. This successfully made it almost impossible for anyone to earn amounts even remotely close to what individuals with similar sites were earning prior to 2012, and most definitely nowhere near pre-2009 earnings. Other policy changes also included how to deal with appeals, which still to this day the large majority are completely ignored, and why you rarely get an actual answer as to why your account was banned, and absolutely in no way to resolve it. The big problem, which Google is aware of. There is an enormous problem that existed for a long time in Google AdSense accounts. Many of the upper management are aware of this problem, but do not want to acknowledge or attempt to come up with a solution for it. It is regarding false clicks on ads. Many accounts get banned for, quote, invalid clicks, end quote, on ads. In the past, this was caused by the publisher trying to self-inflate click-throughs by clicking on the ads featured on their websites. The servers automatically detect self-clicking with the comparison of the IP address and other such information, and the person's account would get banned for invalid clicking. But there was something forming under the surface. A competitor or malicious person would actively go to their competitor's website or pick at random website running AdSense and begin multiple clicking and over-clicking ads, which they would do over and over again. Of course, this would trigger an invalid clicking related ban, mainly because it could not be proven if the publisher was actually behind the clicking. This was internally referred to as, quote, click bombing, end quote. Many innocent publishers would get caught up in bans for invalid clicking, which they were not involved in and weren't even told about. This issue has been in the awareness of Google for a very long time, but nothing was done to rectify the issue and probably never will. Thus, if a person wants to ruin a Google AdSense publisher's account, all they would have to do is go to their website and start click bombing their Google ads over and over again. It will lead to the servers to detect invalid clicking and poof, they get banned. The publisher would be completely innocent and unaware of the occurrence, but would be blamed for it anyway. Their big fear. The biggest fear that Google has about these AdSense procedures and policies is that it will be publicly discovered by their former publishers who were banned, and those publishers unite together and form a class action lawsuit. They also fear those whose primary monthly earnings are from AdSense, because in many countries, if a person claims the monthly amount to their tax agency and they are earning money from Google on a monthly basis, in certain nations, technically, Google can be seen as an employer. Thus, an employer who withholds payments of earnings can be heavily fined by government bodies dealing with labor and employment. And if these government bodies dealing with labor and employment decide to go after Google, then it would get very ugly very quickly. And that is on top of the class action lawsuit.